Now, we've been tasting through 4 of your beers here. These 4 down here. Would you care to take us through these 4? Because they are all drastically different beers.
It'd be a pleasure. It'd be an absolute pleasure. So we'll start off with our Small Beer Lager. Now, this is a classic Pilsner style lager. Pilsner defined by the use of the Czech hop Sars from the town of Pilsen, which gives it a lovely floral nose but a wonderful continental bite on the finish. We use a little Galena in here to give a bit of citrus and a little mosaic to give some stone fruit. To lager, interestingly for your viewers, is the German for to store. And lagering is the maturation, the aging period that a beer gets post-fermentation, once the yeast has converted those fermentable sugars into alcohol. And those periods of time have been shortened to get greater efficiencies in the production industry. 2-3 days now at best you'll find a lager stored for. What's fascinating about this is it gets a minimum of 6 weeks in vessel. And that 6-week lagering period gives it beautifully clean, also very pronounced flavour profiles. On the nose, definitely that floral Sarts characteristic, that little bit of citrus, but it's a very, very clean beer. And on the palate, cheers. It's bright, it's crisp, it's fresh. It's a beer you'd want to open when you get in from work. It's a beer you'd want to open with a barbecue in the sunshine. But the weight and the body and the depth of flavour, given that's just 2.1%.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's an incredibly balanced beer at that ABV. Is this one of your more popular beers?
It is. This is certainly in packaged format.
Right, because you do draft as well.
We do. We do a lot of draft actually, but that is our top seller. So on draft, our session pale.
Right.
It is our top seller. But might be quite an interesting one to taste next actually, because the joy of the 4 beers that we're tasting is that we are actually going to move up through the malt spectrum, along the malt grading, if you will, transitioning from pale malt through crystal malt and rye to chocolate and black malt at the end. Pale ale, packed full of hops, historically brewed to travel. Those hops acting as that natural form of preservative within the beer, and you'll feel it on the nose straight away. Juicy, tropical, it's got that lychee, grapefruit, mandarin, hoppy bitterness.
And this is 2.5%, yes.
2.5% here. Feels far, far bigger.
I find that with all of the beers, actually. Most definitely.
Jamie, thank you. Fresh, really lively on the palate. Nice balanced carbonation. And but not so hoppy that you feel like you've got to chew through it. Hopefully a really lovely hoppy bitterness at the back that draws you back in for more, but not a hop to the gills style pale ale. But a beautiful beer nonetheless.
I really enjoyed that one. That was the one that worried me the most, that I would simply drink twice as much.
Yeah.
Which is probably not what you were aiming for, but yeah.
It's one of the big joys of the beers, we sort of talked about at the start. All of those brilliant flavour profiles are coming through from the grain and the hops. No additions that you wouldn't expect to find within the beer.
Although you do have in those, I can't remember which one, you do have oats, right?
We do.
Yes, yeah.
So I suppose when I talk about additions, I'm thinking about those lactose and maltose.
Yes, yeah.
You're absolutely right. And oats in beer, and in fact we have rye in the the next beer we're going to taste as well. Oats, particularly in the session pale, give it a really lovely creamy texture on the palate, which I think is fascinating as a supporter to the body and depth that you'll certainly find within it. And talking about the use of oats and indeed rye, we segues us rather nicely onto our steam beer. So steam defined by the use of rye. Lots of fun stories around steam beer. Some people say that the brewers of old, because rye releases more vapour into the brewers of old always said it was like stepping into a steam room, and the name, the ingredient became one of the same. Others because the fermentation temperature is actually far warmer, and thus you would find more steam being released from the vessels itself. And it is a 23, 24 degree fermentation temperature here, like you'd expect an ale, as opposed to a lager, which you'll always find is fermented much, much cooler to give you those cleaner, crisper flavours. 23, 24 degrees gives you those malt forward, fruit forward characteristics that you'll find on the steam.
Quite different texturally as well. The mousse is different, definitely, from the...
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you talk about the mousse, steam beer almost is a fusion of ale and lager. So on one hand you get the richness of an ale, but you still get that effervescence, you still get that carbonation that you'd expect from lager. So as opposed to being vented off, you retain that CO2 within the beer. A hybrid, if you will,
yeah.
Which I love. Great if you like your IPAs. Great if you like your ambers. Really nice if you like your cask ales as well.
Yeah, I can see that fitting into that niche, definitely. And finally, we have the dark lager. I've not actually mentioned the steam is 2.7. Okay, so that's actually the highest ABV. Your lager being 2.1, the session ale being 2.5, and the dark lager being 1%.
Just 1%. Nothing quite like this in the world. We don't think, anyhow. 1% dark lager. Typically, you find dark beers are far stronger and can almost move into that edge of being very unctuous, quite syrupy.
Yes. Yeah.
Although it pours looking like a very heavy beer style, and the nose would probably suggest such also. You've got those coffee, toast, dark chocolate, almost a little wisp of smoke as well from the chocolate and black malt. The palate, much lighter, fresh. You've still got those smoky, toasty characteristics coming through. A little bit of chocolate on the back of the palate, but it's not a heavy beer. It's a dark beer that you could equally enjoy in the wintertime as you could in the summertime.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
Dark beer very much gets kept for the deep dark depths of winter.
And you were saying that there's a restaurant chain in the UK that's doing very well with this particular dark lager at brunch. Which I find quite interesting.
They are a roastery and a brilliant restaurant chain. They do a big lunch and brunch trade, and it's one of those beers that does so well through brunch because it's 1%. You can enjoy multiple and still be on your A game for the afternoon. Fascinating, actually, beer to pair with food, as all four are. We in the UK at the moment, it is Pie Week. I'm sure there's a week for so many things now, but
Pie Week.
Pie Week.
I didn't know that existed. Sponsored by Greg's?
Sponsored by Greg's. Certainly not, but maybe they're missing an opportunity there. But it's fascinating when you talk about different food pairings. We always look to pair the lager because of the way that it cuts through with something maybe a little bit more creamy, anything that's oily fish. It works so beautifully. Charcuterie as well. The session pale, anything that's spiced, like you might look to pair a Gewürztraminer or a Viognier, something that's got a bit of Thai spice. Interestingly, this with a fish pie is spectacular. Steam beer, I think something that's a bit more game-like, maybe venison or similar stews, beautiful. Or even just a really great burger. And the dark lager pairs phenomenally well with hard cheeses.
I can see that, yeah.
And it just, that little coffee, that toast, that dark chocolate, and a good hard cheese is a fabulous thing. So really, really interesting, actually, if you do like to experiment with beer and food pairings as options to try.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing these beers with us today. They're not in the Canadian market as of yet, but we may see them in the future.
We certainly hope so.
Thank you very much, James. Bye for now.
Thank you. Cheers.